That's okay. Welcome everybody, and thanks for bearing with me. I've co-hosted, but I haven't ever been the host before. So today we are going to introduce some dolphin photo ID, and I'm going to move that away for a second. Please keep in mind that we are recording and we're going to archive this online so that folks who can't join us live will have a chance to watch it whenever they want. So if you don't want to be seen, you can turn your video off. And if you can keep your microphones muted, we'd appreciate it. So please do submit your questions via the chat option. And you'll want to send those directly to Dr. Kathleen, Kathleen Dudzinski, and she'll kind of tally up your questions and ask them at the end. We'll get to as many as we can. So try and figure out how to push the right buttons. Don't know. Oh, there we go. I am also calling you from Bimini in the Bahamas, where our internet is pretty slow. So there may be a little bit of a lag. Today we're going to talk about photo identification. So who is who and how do scientists tell dolphins apart? And I wanted to say an extra special welcome because today is World Dolphin Day. So happy World Dolphin Day to everybody. And again, I'm Kel, and this summer will mark my 18th year studying the dolphins with DCP. So that's longer than some of you have been alive who are joining us. Today's webinar is going to focus on how scientists, but especially DCP scientists, how we recognize individual dolphins. And we'll talk about why we even bother doing that. Dr. Kathleen, as I said, is monitoring the chat, so type your questions to her and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. And remember, we're recording this, so watch those cameras, watch those microphones. And as a special prize today, since this is our first webinar geared toward elementary kids, you can have your parents submit your email address to the chat, and we'll do a drawing later today, and someone will win a dolphin adoption. So here on this slide, you can see a snapshot of our website. And here is the Adopt a Dolphin selection underneath the Ways to Help tab. And if you want to explore this page later, you can see all of the dolphins in our adoption program. And each of these dolphins is an Atlantic spotted dolphin that we have observed off the coast of Bimini, which is a small island in the Bahamas, and we can tell them apart by using photo identification. So we don't have to tag these dolphins, we don't have to do anything to them in order to tell who's who. So before we talk about dolphins, can you guys tell your family members apart? Can you tell your friends apart? Do you think that if a Martian came down from Mars to study humans, we would all look the same to her? Or do you think she could tell us apart? I bet we can tell each other apart, and the Martian could learn how to as well. Kathleen and I, those are our lovely photos there. We have a lot of similarities. We're around the same height. We're both female. We both have light eyes and brown hair, but my hair is darker and curlier. And Dr. Kathleen has bangs and I don't. Even though we both have light skin, it's a slightly different color and we have different freckles. Our eyebrows are different, our noses, our mouths, and all of these little differences can help other humans tell us apart. Do some of you have dogs at home? I bet some of you do, maybe cats. I bet you can tell them apart. And I bet even if you don't have a dog of your own, you could tell which of these two dogs are black labs and which one is a beagle. That everybody can, right? But what about telling two beagles apart? You think you could tell these two beagles apart, or do they look exactly the same? You might notice that their white stripe between their eyes is different. This is Dixie here in the front. These are Dr. Kathleen's dogs. Dixie has a wider, longer white stripe, but Baloo's in the back, hers doesn't go up so high. And their coloration on their backs is different. Dixie has more black fur on her back, and Baloo is lighter on the back. So even though they're the same breed, we can find ways to tell them apart. Did you know that scientists can tell individual lions apart too? See these dots by their whiskers? Scientists can tell individual lions apart by looking for patterns in their whisker spots, and they can tell them apart. And giraffes, you can tell different species of giraffes apart by how their spot patterns look, and then scientists can actually recognize individual giraffes by their spot patterns. And you'll start to notice a theme here. You know how we tell individual manta rays apart? By the spots on their bellies. So their belly is called the ventral side, and no two manta rays have the same spots on their bellies. Spots are pretty handy, huh? So when we're studying dolphins, there are a few questions that scientists ask when we want to learn about who is who. And first, we want to know which species we're studying. In some places, in some parts of the ocean, you can go out on a boat and see several different species all in the same day, even within the same group sometimes. But in Bimini, at our field site here in the Bahamas, there are pretty much only 2 species of dolphins to choose from: the Atlantic spotted dolphin and the common bottlenose dolphin. I'll give you a guess as to what ocean the Atlantic spotted dolphin lives in and what they look like. They live in the Atlantic Ocean and they have spots, huh? But still, even with only 2 species to choose from, when we go out on the boat, there are times when we only get a quick glimpse of the dolphins and we're not even sure which one cruised past. So for the rest of this class, I'm just going to talk to you about Atlantic spotted dolphins. And next week, if you want to come back, we're going to talk some more about bottlenose dolphins and how to tell them apart. But first, I keep talking about this place, Bimini. Where on earth is that? What am I talking about? Well, here you can see a map of Florida. So this is the southern end of Florida. Miami is here, Fort Lauderdale's there. And this deep, dark color water is the deep Gulf Stream. So this water is really deep. And all these islands over here, and it even extends farther off the map, all these little islands make up the country of the Bahamas. But where I am right now is this little island, Bimini. And that's where we study the dolphins. It's on this shallow bank of water, right next to the deep, deep water. So we talked about telling species apart, and that's really helpful. That's the first step. But what about telling males and females apart? Does anyone here, any of the kids joining today, have any of you gone to college to study lions? Anybody? No, nobody? Really? Are you sure you haven't gone to college to study lions yet? All right, well, even though you haven't gone to college to study lions, can any of the kids tell a male lion apart from a female lion? Can you tell an adult boy lion from an adult female lion? I bet some of you can, right? Is this the female? No. This one? Yes. The male lion has this nice big mane, huh? And the female lion doesn't. And that's something we call sexual dimorphism. It's basically a big science word, meaning that there's something really obvious and physically different between the boys and the girls. And it makes it really handy to tell them apart if you're studying them. Peacocks are another animal that have this. It's only the males that have those big, big feathers, right? But when we want to tell Atlantic spotted dolphins apart, we don't have something big and obvious like that. So we have to get a closer look. We can't know from a distance if we're looking at a boy dolphin or a girl dolphin, but if we get to see their bellies down by their tails, then we can tell the difference. So this is the dolphin's belly, and this is the dolphin's tail. And if you look closely, do you see this long line? And then there's kind of a gap and there's a little dot. It sort of looks like an exclamation point. That's what the male dolphin looks like. And over here, you have a female. She has one long slit and she has two shorter slits on each side. She kind of looks like an uneven division symbol, if you're doing that in math yet. Any guesses as to what these little slits are for? If it's only on the mama dolphins? Those are her mammary slits. That's where the milk is going to come out when she wants to feed her calf. So we know how to tell species apart. We know how to tell males and females apart. Next up, we want to be able to tell their ages apart. Unfortunately, the dolphins don't tell us their birthdays, but we can try and take a guess based on how they look. Do humans look the same at every age? Oh, can you tell a baby apart from someone who's in kindergarten? And maybe a kindergartner looks different than somebody who's in college? And your grandparents all look different than you? Yeah, we know how to tell humans apart by their age, so we have to try and figure out how to tell the dolphins apart. And we do that by categorizing them, lumping them into age classes. So a neonate is the science word for a newborn dolphin. And this here is a newborn dolphin. And you see these stripes? Like a little tiger. Those are called fetal folds. And this is a very young dolphin, and it was folded up inside of its mom's body, and it got these wrinkles. So take your arms or your wrists and bend your arms and your wrists. Do you have wrinkles where you're always bending your body over and over and over again your whole life? Huh. Well, this dolphin got wrinkles from having been folded up. But because it's going to grow and it's going to stretch that skin out, those fetal folds, they're going to fade. And so after a month or so, the dolphin loses those fetal folds and it's a calf. And it just has this nice two-tone coloration. It's dark on the back and it's light on the belly. That gives them a little bit of camouflage in the ocean. But it's still a baby. It's a calf. It's spending just about all of its time with its mom. But then as it starts to get a little older, it's going to start to get dark spots, often around the side of its body, down its belly, maybe on its face. And that's when we call the dolphin a juvenile. It's probably independent from mom, so it gets to do what it wants. But it doesn't have a lot of responsibilities of its own. It doesn't have its own calf to look after. And then it keeps getting spots. So it keeps getting dark spots, but it also continues to get more and more light spots. But they're still spread out. You can still see them all. And then they keep getting spots, more and more and more and more and more spots until it has spots on top of spots. And that's when it's an adult. So we know how to tell species apart. We know how to tell males and females apart. Now we have an idea how to estimate their ages. But what if we really, really, really want to tell them apart individually? Which individual dolphins are we looking at? So if you want, you can type some suggestions into the chat box and Dr. Kathleen could read them out to us if we get any good ones or super silly ones. Any ideas as to why a scientist would want to tell individual dolphins apart? Maybe so we could know how many there are? What if we went out on Monday and we saw 5 dolphins, and then on Tuesday we saw 5 dolphins? If we couldn't tell them apart, how would we know if it was the same 5 dolphins? Or are they totally different and we have 10 dolphins? Or were 3 of them the same and really we have 7 or 8 dolphins? So if we can go out on the boat and recognize individual dolphins, we can start to add up how many different dolphins we see. We can also pay attention to when those moms are having their calves. How old do we think they are when they have their very first baby? And then how long do they keep that baby with them? When do they have their next baby? If all the dolphins look the same, we couldn't ask that question. We also couldn't even ask something simple like, how long do the dolphins live? By knowing that we go out and which dolphin do we see? In a little bit, we're going to talk about dolphin Little Jess. If we don't know how many years in a row we see Little Jess, we can't start to wonder when we stop seeing her and how long we think she's lived. We also want to know where the dolphins go. How far do they go? Do they spend all their time around here? Or do they go far, far away? For those of you who've maybe been to the east coast of the United States, scientists have seen the same bottlenose dolphins off New Jersey and then off North Carolina. So they know the dolphins travel that distance. And then their behavior. If we can recognize individuals, then we can ask all sorts of questions about their behavior. Are there differences between the species? Do ages act differently? Do you think young dolphins play more than old dolphins? Do you think old dolphins have to take naps more because they're so busy fishing and then they get tired? There might be differences in how the different age dolphins behave. And then the males and females might act differently. In these dolphins, only the mamas take care of the babies, which is not very fair. But we know that because we can tell the males and females apart. And we can see that it's the mamas who are looking after the little ones. And then when we can recognize individuals, we can ask all those same questions, but actually comparing 2 different dolphins. Do Tim and Little Jess play with seaweed the same amount? Do they visit Bimini just as often? Do they hang out with the same dolphins? Do they both come and check out our camera? Or does one dolphin stay farther away? We can ask all sorts of questions once we can tell the dolphins apart. So what we do is we go out as often as we can and we collect photographs and video of the dolphins. So thankfully, no 2 spotted dolphins have the same spot pattern. So like our fingerprints are unique, so are the spot patterns. But imagine if you got a new line in your fingerprint every year. That would make things more difficult for the police, huh? Well, remember that spotted dolphins are born without spots and they develop spots through their whole lives? Well, eventually they start to get new spots on top of old spots. So we want to get photos or video of the dolphins as often as we can so we don't lose track of their changing pattern. Have any of you looked up at the night sky and found some constellations? Maybe you've seen the Big Dipper or Orion's Belt? Yeah? Well, if you're in the suburbs, these can be easy to find because the brightest stars really pop out. But if you go out into the country, out in the farmland, away from all the humans' lights, suddenly there are many more stars visible, and it becomes harder and harder to find the pattern that you thought you knew so well. That's sort of like an aging spotted dolphin. So as we collect photos and video of the dolphins, we make a photo ID catalog. This used to be made up of, and the younger people here might not even believe this, but pencil and paper. Scientists used to draw the spots on a sketch, and then they'd take their photographs and they'd print them, and they'd make slides. Well, now we get to use digital photos and we can just look at them that night as soon as we get back from the boat if we want. And most of these pictures are taken underwater, So we can use the dolphin's whole body, all of their spots. And even though the spot patterns are unique, and we could rely solely on those spot patterns, because remember, no two dolphins have the same spot pattern, but we can also use nicks and scars. And so that helps us recognize the dolphins more quickly. Every dolphin in our catalog gets a number. So here you can see number 35 and number 10. And then some of them get names, and those are the dolphins who join our Adopt a Dolphin program. So this is little Jess. We're gonna look a little more closely at her. So look at that picture for a minute, and even though I can't hear you, what are some of the things you notice about little Jess? You might look at her fins, you might look at her spots, you might look at her rostrum. Rostrum is what her beak or her mouth is called. And when you look there, you might see that her top jaw and her lower jaw, they don't match up. That lower jaw sticks out. She has an underbite. And then you might look at her spots and see, oh, you could kind of find a pattern here behind her eye. And you might use that, like Orion's belt, to tell her apart. And maybe you want to look at her dorsal fin. Anybody know which fin is her dorsal fin? It's on the dorsal side of her body. It's this back fin, but uh-oh, we can't see that. It didn't come out in the picture. So this top picture is the one that you've just looked at, and you can see little Jess in 2004. This is what she looked like in 2018. So she's gotten a lot more spots, but you can't make out that spot pattern. It's still there. It didn't disappear. It's under there somewhere. But if we had gone all these years without seeing her, we wouldn't be able to match her ID just from those spots because we wouldn't be able to find them. But thankfully, we saw her every year in between these pictures, so we knew for sure it was her. And she still has that underbite. And then coincidentally, neither picture shows her dorsal fin. So we can't use her dorsal fin quite so well to recognize her. Let's look a little closer at the dorsal fin. Maybe, there it is. So these are little Jess's dorsal fin notches in 2007. You see those two notches? They're not very deep, but she won't grow them back. She won't fill in those notches. And here she is in 2016, and you can still find those notches. So we can use that if we're on the boat and we see her come up to take a breath, then we can recognize her from those notches. So that's it about little Jess. If you want to learn more about photo ID, you can ask your parents, of course, if they can go to our website. And underneath the education tab, you'll find kids science activities. And there's a photo ID worksheet there. Activity and worksheet has some other pictures of dolphins that you can try and find their patterns and you can practice with. And of course, you can check out any of the other activities that you want. And then we have lots of other education stuff on our website for kids, but also for some of the grown-ups. Our podcast is called the Dolphin Pod. Our hosts, Dr. Justin Gregg and Laura Teasdale, they talk about dolphins and two scientists, and it's quite silly and fun. And then we have two webinar programs. This one is a DCP Dolphin Lesson. So we try and gear it a bit more toward elementary students. And then our deep dives are a little more advanced, so more maybe high school and up. Our next deep dive is this Thursday. We're going to talk about bottlenose dolphins and when they crater feed in the sand here in Bimini, they dig out a snack. And then next week, Dr. Kathleen will talk about some more photo ID, but of bottlenose dolphins. And then,
hey, Cal?
yeah,
go ahead. No, we had some questions. Is this a good time since you're on the question slide?
Sure.
Danielle asked, what causes the spots to form on the dolphins?
Good question. Thank you. It is a genetic pigmentation. So the one thing scientists know is that it's not sunburn, like all of my freckles or most of my freckles. So it's not environmental. They're genetically designed to get these spots, but we're not 100% sure why. So one thing that might be why they have spots is to protect them from predators. So has anyone ever heard about why zebras might have stripes, or what the lucky thing about being a zebra with stripes is? It might be that when they are all together in a big group, it's much harder for their predator to pick out just one zebra. And so the spots might do the same thing for the dolphins. If they come together in a group, a predator might have a harder time grabbing them, figuring out one dolphin from the other. It also might help them recognize the ages of the dolphins around them, so that when it's time to mate, they are looking for an older dolphin, a dolphin who's ready to have a calf. It might help them recognize each other. And also, it might just not do any harm. And that's the tricky thing with evolution, is that sometimes it just didn't do any harm. And so it just kept being passed down from generation to generation. Nice questions.
Cool. And then Stacy A asks, do we use an underwater camera?
We do. We use a few different underwater cameras. A lot of our photo ID catalog is from still pictures. So when we go out, we usually have students with us. Sometimes we even have people just on vacation who help us take photographs. And that's an underwater camera, either waterproof or a camera that goes inside a housing to stay nice and dry. And then we collect our video the same way. We have an underwater housing, basically a waterproof box that our video camera can slide into, and has buttons on the outside so we can turn our camera on and off and start and stop. And then we can take that underwater and record the dolphins. We also have special microphones that go underwater, and an underwater microphone is called a hydrophone. And we can use those hydrophones to record what the dolphins are saying, their vocalizations.
Very cool. And Nicole wants to know when they stop growing. When do the dolphins stop growing?
Nice question, Nicole. That's going to depend on the dolphin species. So for the Atlantic spotted dolphins here in Bimini, they're probably close to full length by the time they're, I'd say, 5 or 6. And then they start to get a little bit wider, gain a little bit more girth.
Very cool. And then I think it's Eleanor was asking how they are born.
Interesting question. So they're mammals. We'll just make sure everybody's on the same page. So that means that the female dolphin, the mama, gives birth to a live young, to a live dolphin. And she only has one calf at a time. And the dolphin comes out tail first. And the handy part of coming out tail first means that one of the last things to come out is the dolphin's blowhole right on the top of their head. And that's how the dolphin breathes, through that blowhole. Because they're mammals and not fish, they don't have gills, so they have to go up to the surface every time they want to take a breath. So since the blowhole is one of the last things to come out, then the mama can help push the dolphin, who can already swim, up to the surface to take that first breath.
Very cool. Well, I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions, if that would be okay, with you, Cal.
Yeah, I've got plenty of time.
Okay, well then maybe we'll do a couple more, because we have a few more coming in, and I'm gonna bring my video up because I have a question for you. Hopefully it'll come up. And my question, before I answer, before I bring up some of the other questions that have come through, I wanted to ask you, how many dolphins can you recognize when you are studying them out in, collecting data and recording the behavior? Do you recognize a lot or a few?
I think I used to be a little bit better at it, but I would say when I'm on the boat, there are probably at least 30 dolphins that I can just recognize as soon as I see them from the boat, and maybe another 10 or 15 that I can recognize once I get underwater and really get a better look at them. And then there are the rest. I have to wait until I get back to my computer and pull up a snapshot of the video or a picture and compare it to the photo ID catalog and try and match up those spots and those scars.
Cool. Well, we actually had a question about how do they get the notches in their fins from Olivia.
Good question. And this answer will depend. There are different ways. They can be pretty rough with each other. A lot of people think of dolphins as just this happy, smiley creature. That smile that you see on their face is actually just how their face is shaped. They can't frown, but they also can't smile. So they are often playful and energetic, and they take care of each other, but they can also get mad at each other and they can fight. So some of the smaller nicks are probably from other dolphins, but the bigger ones are either from boats hitting them, unfortunately, or from sharks who tried to have them for snack, but the dolphin got away.
So that there was another question about how do they get the notches in their fin? Is that what we just went through?
Yep.
Okay.
So they can get some notches from each other and some from their natural predator, the sharks.
Okay. And then we also had how big can dolphins get?
Ooh, that's a good one too. And that depends on the species, which the more of these webinars you join with DCP, you'll see we say that as the answer a lot. It depends on the species. Does anybody know what the largest dolphin species is in the whole world? Eeny, meeny, miny, moe.
Oh, we have a couple people I think who know because they're replying in with killer whale and orca, which are the same.
Good. So even though we try and make that trick question, because I asked about a dolphin, so how can killer whale be the right answer? The killer whale is actually the largest member of the dolphin family, and it can grow to be about the size of a school bus. Atlantic spotted dolphins are a lot smaller, so they get to be about 5 or 6 feet long.
Very cool. We've had a couple of questions that come in to ask, can dolphins have twins, or have you ever seen a mother dolphin with twins?
So dolphins very rarely have twins, and anyone who has seen it, or I think most, if not all, observations have been in captivity. One or both dolphin calves doesn't survive. They're really just built for one.
Very cool. We had two sort of related questions. One about what food do they eat, and the other about how do dolphins drink. So maybe you could answer those together.
Sure. Guess what the answer on what they eat is going to be. Depends on the species. Atlantic spotted dolphins here in Bimini, we think sometimes snack on small fish, little fish on the sand, little lizard fish or gobies. But we think they do most of their feeding out in the deep water, feeding on bigger things like mackerel and ballyhoo. And even though we think that they do most of their feeding out there in the deep water, that doesn't mean that if a tasty fish swims by while they're in the shallow water, the dolphins don't say, oh, it's shallow, I'm not allowed to eat here. So we've seen them chasing after mackerel. We've seen them chasing after ballyhoo, which is like a long needlefish. And we think that's where they get the bulk of their food from. They don't have to drink water. They get their water from the fish.
Very cool. Very cool. We had, I think we'll take this one more question in here, which is how long can dolphins stay underwater? And I think that means how long can they hold their breath?
Yes. Guess what the answer is? Depends on the species. So we don't know how long an Atlantic spotted dolphin can hold its breath for. That's the type of question where scientists get their answer from experiments and studies that they do with dolphins in captivity, dolphins who are trained to do a certain behavior for their trainers or for scientists, or from bigger species that scientists tag, and the tag can record how long and maybe how deep they went down when they took a dive. So for the smaller Atlantic spotted dolphins in the wild, we have to just kind of take a guess based on what we see in other species and what we observe when we're watching them. So I think that an Atlantic spotted dolphin could maybe hold its breath for about 5 minutes if it really needed to, if it was really working hard to get its dinner, if it was really trying to get away from a shark. But when we see them, they're usually not holding their breath for more than a minute or so at a time.
Sounds good. Well, thank you.
Thanks,
It's been
everybody.
a great program.
And up there on this last slide, you can see ways to stay in touch with us. So email us if you have more questions. And if your parents let you, you can check out our website. I showed you some of those places where you can learn more. If you have an assignment for school and you need to get some dolphin information, I think we've got some stuff on our website that you can use. And then, of course, we hope that you might support us down the line. We just started a promotion with our friends at Wanderer Bracelets. Since today is World Dolphin Day, for the next month, all purchases of Wanderer Bracelets come with a coupon for 20% off an electronic adoption kit from us. And because of all this craziness in the world, I know some of you might already be homeschooled. My kiddos are already homeschooled, but some of you are probably used to going to school every day, huh? And now you're at home every day. Well, we know that that's really tough on a lot of people, and a lot of people are still going to work so that people can get help when they go to the hospital, that there's groceries when your parents go to the grocery store. So anyone who makes a purchase from our website for $15 or more, you can choose someone in your life that you know that you want to get a free dolphin adoption kit by email. So you can send us the name of your favorite nurse or grocery store manager, your teachers if they're working really hard trying to get lots for you to do on the computer. You can nominate somebody and we'll send them a kit just for free and just to say thank you to them. The last reminder, if you haven't already, put your email address into that chat to Dr. Kathleen and we'll add you to our email list, and we'll add you to the contest today to get your own free dolphin adoption. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks. I've gotten quite a few.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Anything else? Great. Thanks, everybody. Stay in touch. I appreciate you guys being here. And I'm going to insert some elevator music while I get my computer to show me the end meeting button that has disappeared. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.